Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Storytime with Rob. Today is Friday, and you know what that means. Yes, you do. It is Festive, Fabulous Friday, Self-Improvement Saturday. And I've got a fun one for you today, probably a little more on the Self-Improvement Saturday side, but I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a great weekend. This is called Let It Go. And you can see this. I have a glass and a pitcher of water. And I know what you're thinking as I fill this up. Oh, I've heard this before. Is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Well, this has nothing to do with that, even though that is a good story, and maybe I'll bring that up at some point. But I want to ask you this question. How much do you think this glass of water weighs? 8 ounces? 12 ounces? I'm thinking somewhere in between there. The absolute weight of this glass doesn't really matter. It all depends on how long I hold it. For example, if I held this for just a few minutes, it's not that heavy. It's actually pretty light. If I held it for an hour, yeah, this is going to start to ache. My arm is going to start to feel it. If I held this all day long, then that is a whole nother story. My arm will likely cramp up and feel completely numb and paralyzed, forcing me to drop the glass to the floor. In each case, the weight of the glass doesn't change, does it? But the longer I hold it, the heavier it feels to me. So think about that for a second. And I want you to consider this. Your stresses and worries in life are very much like this glass of water. Think about them for a while and nothing happens. Think about them a bit longer and it starts to ache a little bit. Think about them all day long and you will feel completely numb and paralyzed, incapable of doing anything else until you drop them. This is a true analogy for many, including myself. I want to remind ourselves to take a chill pill. Don't pack these things around with you. They will weigh you down and will continue to get heavier and heavier and heavier until you can't really bear it any longer. As Bill Nye used to say when we watched my kids' videos, please consider the following. When I was a senior in high school, there was this super crazy Saturday in my life. I played in the finals of a tennis tournament at the university where we lived, which in itself is pretty amazing, considering that myself. Well, and I actually won the tournament, which is even more amazing. We got home around noon. As we were driving home, we could see this black plume of smoke. As we got closer to it and closer to it, we realized that there was 2 fire engines actually in our yard. And there was a barn next to the back of our shop in the back, the neighbor's barn, and 2 kids were playing with matches in there, set the thing ablaze. Huge smoke. The fire department was there. We didn't know anything about it at the time. You know, cell phones weren't quite around back then. So anyway, it was a big mess. And so we got that all dealt with. We go back into the house. We're sitting there later that afternoon. Knock on the door. I answered it, and it was a lady, and she said, hello. She told me her name, and she said, is your mom home? And I said, absolutely, let me go get her. Have a seat. She sat on the couch. I went and got my mom. She came in, sat down, and the lady said, you could tell she was nervous. She said, do you remember me? And my mom said, no, I don't remember you. Well, she proceeded then to tell my mom that she grew up in the house across the street from where my grandparents lived, and as a child, And as she was a little bit older, my mom got married. And her and my dad got married. They got all their wedding gifts and put them into my grandfather's garage. And this gal, as a teen, while they were on their honeymoon, snuck over to the garage and looked at all these wonderful gifts that were in the garage. And then she took one of them, took it home, unwrapped it, and it was a set of ceramic bowls. And it was actually a really pretty set of ceramic bowls. So she took these and she told my mom that she has thought about that day for the past 30 years. So for 30 years, every time she made a salad or some cookies or whatever, and she pulled those bowls out of the counter, she thought about what she had done. And those bowls weighed heavily on her. In other words, she'd been packing this glass around for a very, very long time. So she broke down into tears as she took these set of bowls and handed them to my mother and pleaded for forgiveness from my mom for stealing these bowls from her. Well, the funny thing is my mom didn't even know about the bowls. She had no recollection of them because she'd never opened them, didn't know they even existed. And so I find that interesting that this woman had lived with this for over 30 years, thinking that she was this terrible person, even though my mom didn't even know about it. Well, they embraced, and as she walked out of our home with an all-new sense of peace and freedom she had not felt in over 30 years. My mom still has these bowls to this day, and they're in her cupboard, and they're a reminder of that event, which happened quite a few years ago. Can you imagine the feeling that that woman had as she went home the next time she made the cookies and salad? The peace that she must have felt as she drove away from my mom's house, even though it was embarrassing. Whatever it is, let it go. Whatever you did, let it go. Whatever it may cost you, or however embarrassing it may be, let it go. You'll never truly be happy or forgiven until you learn to deal with it and then let it go. What is it that you are holding for all this time? Think about that for a minute. Don't hold that glass any longer. Deal with it now and let it go. The moral is, it's important to remember to let your stresses and worries go. Anyway, I hope you have a great weekend, and until tomorrow, be safe.